Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Kris Roberts. And the first thing I'm going to talk about today is something that really ticks me off. One of the things that it's a skill on an average that we pay, depending where you live around the country, from $125,000 to over $300,000 to educate our children from preschool, kindergarten, up to high school graduation. And without this skill, you cannot really do anything in the United States except work at a very low skill, low paying job. And without this skill, you condemn your children to the same cycle over and over and over. Your children, their children, your great-grandchildren, etc. And that skill is reading. And we're told over and over and over again how many reasons why kids can't read. Well, they don't read books, or they spend too much time on social media. There's all these different excuses. When I was young, I was in 5th grade. I wasn't a very good reader. Mrs. Monroe, my 5th grade teacher, she taught me how to read, and she taught me how to read well. And not only read, but the ability to comprehend what I read. And we had these reading programs where there was all in these different colors, and it was like 10 or 12 different reading little booklets in each color. So you would read, it would be about 3-4 pages, and then you would answer the questions at the back of the book. So you could prove that you could understand what was read. And what happened was, every time you passed, you get another one. And we had a big chart on the classroom. And you just moved your little man or little person, little marker, keep moving along as your reading ability got better. And so you were rewarded for learning how to read and learning how to comprehend what you were reading. Then some of these great thinkers from California said, you know what? The reason why kids can't read, or kids can't do math, or kids can't do very well and things, is self-esteem. So what they said was, you know, if Kris is reading, and he's reading more and doing more, and he's moving up the line, the reason Johnny can't read is because Johnny's embarrassed, and Johnny has no self-esteem. So let's do away with the chart, and then Johnny will be able to read, because we'll make Johnny feel good. And then since Johnny is feeling good, he'll be able to do better. Okay? Well, that didn't really kind of work out too well. Then, for example, you know, President Kennedy's fitness rewards, you know, The reason Billy isn't doing very well because Becky or Janelle, they're getting the President's Award for physical fitness, and it's hurting his self-esteem. So let's stop giving out these awards and Billy will do better. Didn't work out very well. So we have been telling people over and over and over in our education system, if we make the kids feel really good about themselves, everything else will follow. Well, everything else will follow? No. When you accomplish things, you feel better about yourself. You don't feel better about yourself and then say, oh, wow, I feel really good, so I'm going to learn a lot today. It doesn't work that way. And anybody who's been in the Marine Corps or known Marines, self-confidence, self-esteem, all those selves, the reason they're called self is because you have to earn them yourself. Once you earn them, no one can take it away from you. So if I go and say, Johnny, I want you to feel really good about yourself. Johnny, you are doing really well. Don't worry about it. I'm not even going to grade your papers anymore, Johnny, because just give me any old answer and I'll be happy with that answer. And we'll go from there. Okay? So Johnny's feeling really good about himself. Hey, my teacher's giving me A's and I'm doing really good. Well, then Johnny goes someplace else. He does this, and someone goes, oh, Johnny, you really suck. Don't you know anything? Then Johnny gets blown out of the water. Johnny doesn't have any more self-esteem because he was given self-esteem, and anything that's given can always be taken away. Johnny never earned anything. So Johnny was only a moment away from disaster. And so what got me going is my wife reads this People's Magazine. I don't like the People's Magazine because I go, wow, this is really so basic. And I just felt, you know what? It was pretty appropriate that People's Magazine had this article about former inmate turned into literacy hero. I'm teaching myself to read on TikTok. He's been assessed with reading. He went to jail, and he's been reading. Oliver James is helping thousands of people turn their life around with them. And what the people here in People Magazine, literacy by the numbers, 20% of adults struggle to read basic sentence. A basic sentence is a noun, a verb, and maybe an adjective or two, maybe sometimes an adverb, but no more than 5 or 6 words. 54% of adults who read below a 6th grade level, and 28% of young people age 8 to 18 who read daily. And when I go, well, you know what? This is People's Magazine, and you know what? People's Magazine tend to embellish, to help sell stories and stuff. So I wanted to go in and look at some of the numbers. Okay. So I looked up the United States literacy statistics for 2024. It was updated on January 8th. It was updated 2 days ago. Okay? It says, on average, 79% of U.S. adults nationwide are literate in 2024. So basically, 21% of the people in the adults in the United States are illiterate. Okay? Well, those numbers don't seem too bad. Of course, they would have to be much higher. It should be much higher. And, for example, Massachusetts was the state with the highest rate of children able to read. New Mexico was the lowest. New Hampshire was the state with the highest percentage of adults considered illiterate. The state with the lowest adult literacy was California. Okay? And you go, well, that's not too bad. New Hampshire is doing pretty good. So like New Hampshire, Minnesota, and North Dakota have the highest rates of adults. Florida, New York, and California had the lowest rates in descending order. And they go, nothing to be proud of, but those are pretty low rates. Okay. So when you go and look at those numbers and everything, the first thing you have to ask, what is literacy? You go, 79% of the adults are illiterate. Have trouble pronouncing the word. Okay. To be literate, you must complete a task that requires compare and contrast information, paraphrase, or making low-level inferences. Okay? Compare and contrast. Compare an apple to a lemon. An apple can be sweet, or say, hey, for example, what's the difference between a red apple and a green apple? That's comparing and contrasting. Oh, a red apple is usually sweet and juicy. A green apple is usually kind of sour and dry. Okay, so you can say, well, what we're saying is while most apples are fruits, while all apples are fruit, some are sweet and some are sour. That's paraphrasing. Or making a low-level inference. Not all apples are juicy. If you can do that, you are considered to have the ability to read. You are literate. They go, oh, okay. So now that you know that's the basic requirement to be considered literate, okay, in the world, do you know 54% of the adults in the United States cannot, 54% of the adults, or the illiterate ones, read below 6th grade level. That's 54% of the adults in the United States cannot read at a 6th grade level. So that's why when you go to People magazine, there's not a lot of long sentences there. There's not too many big words. And the paragraphs are really short. The stories are really short. 20% of the adults cannot read at a 5th grade level. Just think of that. If you walk down the street in downtown and you saw 20 people, 20 adults walking, statistically 4 of them cannot read at a 5th grade level. 11 of the 20 cannot read at a 6th grade level. Okay. And before you want to go and blame 34%, so 1 out of every 3 adults who are not proficient in literacy were born outside the United States. So, while yes, the vast majority of the migrants, illegal aliens, you name immigration, will not be proficient in reading. 2/3 of the ones who cannot read at proficiency were born, raised, and educated right here in the United States. When you go in and your child brings home the thing from school and says, whoa, I got a 248 or I got a 252. Oh, you go, oh, that's not bad. And what they compare it to, this is what the school average, this is what the state average is, this is what the national average is. But what they don't bother telling you, that 260, like for example, the average score nationwide in the United States was 264. And so when you compare, well, this one has 272, this one, so you're comparing that. But they're not telling you that 264 is out of a possible 500. Just think, if you had a test of 500 questions and you got 264 right, that means you got 236 wrong. And that's if you're average. And so on, I'm going, we like to go in and say we have an education system that really is doing really well. Well, according to NEAP, only 37% in 2019, before COVID started, only 37% of high school graduates were ready to go to college based on their reading skills. Only 37% of the high school graduates in 2019 could read at 12th grade or higher. If you put that in other words, if we want to flip the number around, in 2019, before COVID, 61% of the high school graduates in the United States could not read at 12th grade level. That's not counting the ones, the 10 to 15% that have dropped out. Okay? We fudge statistics and everything to make the dropout numbers look really low. But just think, 63% of the graduates cannot read. You stop and realize if you had a graduating class of 300 students, 100 would be proficient in reading, proficient or better, and 200 of those graduates getting their diplomas, many going off to college, cannot read at a 12th grade level. And what does college do? Hey, college is there to make money. Okay? So you go to Harvard. Dummies get A minuses. It's no longer gentlemen B's. Okay? Shoot, find a student that is going to graduate with a 2.2 or 2.3 nowadays. You know, you go grade inflation all the way, because grade inflation keeps students in their seats, and that means the checks keep coming in every semester. And so, like I said earlier, you know, if you go to Mississippi or Louisiana, where they don't like to spend very much money on educating kids, or you go to some places like New York City or New Jersey or something, when they're spending over $30,000 a year to educate the children, that would come out between $125,000 to over $300,000 to educate a child. And you would be able to think, for example, New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Trenton, New Jersey, the places that spend a lot of money, places Los Angeles, San Francisco, are spending all this amount of money. Even if the kids came out of school not knowing anything extra, shouldn't they be able to read and write and do arithmetic? For that amount of money, every child should finish school knowing the basics, knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to do their math. But it's not happening. But how? But how have we gotten so complacent that we go, no big deal? Well, if we're not teaching kids how to read and not how to compare and contrast and do this, what we do is we get to feed them all kinds of crap, all kinds of junk news, all kinds of fake news, half-truth, all kinds of this stuff. And then no one is going to stand up and go, well, every once in a while people go, hey, I don't know what this means. I can't read. No one wants to be embarrassed is saying Johnny can't read. Once he gets out of public school system, who cares? Not my problem. Once Johnny gets out of college, who cares? not my problem. And when I go and look at what they do, more and more return on investments, and we're looking at there's people 10 years after graduating from college, their median salary was like $45,000. I go, wait. You don't go to spend all that time, spend all that money, take loans out to get a job that 10 years after you graduate, you're making about $45,000 a year. I'm sending my kids to go to college. I expect 10, 15 years out, they're making real good salaries. And to give you an example how, when we were stationed in California, and I remember going to Arby's, I'm looking, and there was pictures of everything, and they had the display right here. You pressed what you wanted on the display screen, then you pressed what money you, I'm going to put a $5 bill, 2 of them, press it twice, 3 ones, bing, bing, bing. And then on the other side, it would show up what my change was going to be. And I go, oh, wait a minute. A 5th grader could have gave me my change. Now, there's stores around the country that will only take a credit or a debit card. The reason being is they can't find workers who know how to subtract and make change. You ever go to a store and you're waiting in line and the cashier is trying to figure out how to make change? It's like, oh man, you don't want to embarrass the person or not. And sometimes I says, well, yep, that'll be 3 ones and a 5 and a quarter and 2 pennies. Oh, thank you. The cashier wasn't embarrassed or not. She just felt relieved. And I'm going, what happens if I totaled the wrong amount? Excuse me. And so the inability for people to read and comprehend what they're reading is causing things like Facebook and TikTok and all those really to control, because people, I saw this on TikTok. Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you know what? It's kind of stupid. You want to take another TikTok challenge? Oh, that's pretty stupid. Oh, I have a heart condition. I'm on, I got a pacemaker. But you know what? I'm going to go to Panera's and I'm going to get this super duper supercharged lemonade. Why? Because I saw it on a TikTok challenge. Well, I died. Now my parents are going to go sue Panera's. Why? Maybe the parent should have sued the public school for not understanding, teaching a child how to read, comprehend the dangers of doing things. But it didn't happen. It's always easy. Oh, I gave my daughter chicken McNuggets from McDonald's, and they burnt her. So I'm going to go sue McDonald's. Why? Because I couldn't read or understand was contents may be hot means. So much stuff happens because people can't read. take the wrong medicine. Oh, couldn't read it. I couldn't read the prescription. And so, again, this is where the politicians and other ones try to get around and say 79% of the American adults are literate. Okay? But only 37% of them can read or comprehend at a 12th grade level. 54% cannot read and comprehend at a 6th grade level. Okay. See how we keep lowering and lowering and lowering the standards? But when we're saying 54% of adults cannot read at a 6th grade level, so in this one, so if we had a graduating class of 300 in some fictional town, 160 of the graduating seniors, just think of it, 160 of those 300 in a statistical town, graduating seniors would not be able to read the graduation program. So just think, where we've got a system that we're saying is you're 12th grade, but you're at least 6 years behind in reading, but we're going to allow you to graduate, and plus we're going to say you're literate. Okay? Somehow, I don't see reading at 6th grade, I don't call understanding 6th grade or below a level, or reading at that level, kind of like picture books, big word books. That's not really being literate. That's not literacy. That's politicians and other ones playing with numbers to make people feel good while people are getting screwed over, while people can't get jobs, while people are getting replaced by machinery, while people are getting replaced by AI and stuff. So what are all these people going to do? Just think, okay? Right now, I'm 22 years old. I just got out of college. Okay, I have some trouble reading, and I go in for a job interview, and they, hey, say some of this. No. Oh, and they go, oh, or hey, did anybody bother proofreading your resume? Or don't you have to put a sentence together? Or don't you understand the questions I gave you? Oh, I don't understand why I can't get a job. I can't get a job that pays enough for me to pay my loans back. Whose fault is that? Well, there's a catch. Yes, you may say the system failed you, but when you're looking out there, it almost gets to the point you really have to understand you can't really trust the system to do the right thing for you or the right thing for your children. So if you're not going to take care of them, then that system is not going to take care of you. And so people will say, well, we need more money to help reading specialists and all this other kind of stuff. Well, you know what? $190 billion was given to school districts around the country over the last couple of years as a result of COVID to make up for the reading loss and education loss and things like that. And all that money has to be used, obligated by September 30th of 2024, else the money is has to be turned back. So I'm giving this one because it's part of a question that was brought up that I'm going to have to answer lately. New Hampshire school districts received nearly $1 billion in federal aid since the outbreak of COVID-19. The funding was meant to help pay for remote learning, HVAC upgrades, and learning loss initiative. But that money is due to expire in September 24th, and some researchers warn that schools could be facing a funding cliff if they don't prepare. So a lot of school districts have been living high in the hog because they've had all this money coming in. A recent study of New England states by Georgetown University Economics Lab found that New Hampshire schools on the average face a 3% budget cut in the next year. It is in part because of the loss of federal funding, in part because of the continuous drop in education. And these fiscal shocks coming are something we have never ever seen before. The hardships will not hit school districts equally. Schools with more low-income students will face greater budget headaches. Schools with more low income receive more federal COVID money, so they also stand to lose COVID money. Concord School District will likely need to reduce its budget by 2% to account for the loss of COVID relief funding. Manchester School District, which had a higher percentage of students who qualified for free and reduced lunch, will face a 10 to 14% drop in funding, the study said. The end of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief for ESSA funding could be important to the upcoming spring school budget session. School boards are preparing to draft budgets for the 2024-2025 and release them for approval. Here on the Keene school budget, we had our first all-day Saturday meeting last Saturday. We'll have our second one, and then we'll get ready. This full school board will take a recommendation from the finance committee, make changes as it so feels, and then present that to the public. And according to researchers, the ESSA money may have helped New Hampshire districts mask bigger problems with declining enrollment and delayed the need to downsize accordingly. The anticipated sudden loss of funding could require schools to reduce personnel. In Concord, the projected loss suggests 11 positions need to be cut. In Manchester, 35 to 60 positions could be at risk. Compounding the problem is the fact that despite receiving millions of dollars under ESSER funds, many school districts have struggled to spend it at all. So far in New Hampshire, basically, the average community, schools would have a lower income had more money left over than higher income schools. So it's kind of like the higher income school districts like Bedford and the Lakes region and everything. They got less money, but they had no problem spending that money. And so as of a little long ago, the higher income students, school districts had spent 54% of their funds. The lower income had only spent 31% of their funds. And again, if it's not obligated, it will have to be returned. When Congress gave all this money out, $190 billion, they said only 20% had to be spent on learning loss recovery. And and what's happening is these issues with leftover relief money is not unique to New Hampshire. While Congress was quick to appropriate the money at the peak of the pandemic, schools across the country have struggled to spend it down efficiently. One of the things, it's like in Keene, we got over $8 million in ESSER funds. A lot of that money of the ESSER funds was spent on upgrading the heating and ventilation to improve the air quality in the schools to help reduce the risk of airborne and respiratory diseases. Okay, and yes, we had the 20%. We went out to look for teachers, to find reading teachers, math teachers, and a whole bunch, but they weren't to be found. And so there was limited on where you could spend the money for, because you couldn't find the people that you wanted to spend the money on. And unlike places in Vermont where they said, well, we had homeless families and stuff, so we put the families up in motels and stuff, and we spent it on, we used ESSER funds for that. We had mental health problems for the families and staff and stuff, so we spent ESSER money on that. We hired a lot of people. We created a new bunch of programs, but we spent ESSER money on that. Schools in California and the Los Angeles School District Teachers Union said, well, we didn't have to worry about this like any other program. Yes, they'll come in, but we'll just go in and we'll make sure that the money is continued on into future budgets. Well, that is a hard no. It isn't going on to future budgets. So a lot of things that they had been spending money on, now if the school districts want to continue programs, extra people they hired, they have to come out of their own tax base. And COVID pandemic stimulus money, $5 trillion. That's how much money that was spent. $5 trillion. You know where that money gone? Well, first, that $5 trillion came out, that was out of the federal government. That doesn't count the breaks that the Federal Reserve gave. But that $5 trillion, of $745 billion, $745 billion went to state and local. the CARES Act, $72 billion for Medicare payments, $190 billion for elementary, secondary, $6 billion for non-public schools. So $190 billion for public schools, $6 billion for non-public schools, $244 an American Rescue Plan direct aid. And so the $244 billion on American Rescue Plan direct aid and the elementary and secondary education, $190 billion, so basically $430 billion of one-time money. A lot of places didn't use it efficiently. A lot of places used it to reduce taxes. New Hampshire was one of the places that did. And so what happened is now the money stops. So September 30th, a little bit more than 8 months away, all this COVID money stops. And for example, the things that we, if you look right around in the Keene area, okay, the city of Keene was able to pay down some bonds and things it had, so they saved interest payments going forward. And so it was kind of, instead of really taking as much stuff off the capital improvement and buy it now, and basically kind of keeping the tax rate the same, no, the tax rate took a dip. The school, we normally return about maybe $2.5 million, $5-6 million. We returned a lot. We did a lot. We invested in the schools and everything, but we returned a lot of money back to the taxpayers. The county returned some money back to the taxpayers, but the county did start their own EMS service. So, for example, that will have a cost going forward that won't be paid by COVID money after September 30th. So what is really going to happen, the city and the school district did not waste, did not make weird purchases, did not hire a whole bunch of people or create programs that are going to cost money going into the future. But the excess money reduced our tax rate over the past couple of years. You may have not seen that much, if any, of a smaller tax bill, but our tax rate right now is around 32. Pretty significant from what it was 3-4 years ago. But what makes up the difference, one of the reasons why our tax rate comes up at 32 was the evaluation of our properties. Housing went up pretty substantially during COVID. And so while people were making cash offers, overbidding, paying over higher than asking price, every time they did that, that caused the price of the property and surrounding properties to go up, allowing the city or the school to collect the same amount of money off the property, but at a lower tax rate. So, hey, when you can go and say, hey, my tax rate used to be $37 per thousand. Now it's only $32 per thousand. But, oh yeah, by the way, The value of your $300,000 house is now $400,000. So $400,000 at 32 is higher than $300,000 at 37. Give you an example of a school district in Indiana. It has 16,000 students, 17 schools, and it was given $53.5 million in COVID money. This is what its plan was to do with that. $13.6 million to hire staff to create a fully virtual K through 8 school. Just think of that. We are going to create a whole new school at $13.6 million. So, for example, your kindergarten, K through 8, would never have to step into a public school because everything would be done virtually. Okay? $9.7 million for 42 new staff positions, including reading interventionists and teachers to support students learning English. So that was for migrant students, immigrant students, things like that, English second language students. $8.7 million for HVAC upgrades, $1.6 million for Chromebook hotspots and other tech upgrades, $4.9 million for personal protective equipment and custodian supplies, $2.6 for student and employee wellness, including a wellness coach, $1 million to support extracurricular activities, and $783,000 for curriculum and other supplies. The school superintendent says every dollar is budgeted for and accounted for. Okay? That $9.7 million for 42 new staff positions continues on. That $13.6 million to hire new staff to create a virtual high school. And so, you know what? Only $10 million of that goes on. The $8.7 million for HEA heating and air conditioning upgrades, good investment because that's saving you money that you would have to spend. $6.1 million for Chromebook hotspots and tech. So that means that you would have to repair and replace Chromebooks every year because basically most Chromebooks become obsolete within 3 years. So say maybe $1 million a year. The $4.9 for personal protective equipment and custodian supplies, that's a one-time thing, but then you probably have about $2 million of those you'll have to go each year. So man, we'll take that out, be nice. $2.6 for student and employee wellness, that's going to continue on. $1 million to support extracurricular activities, that's going to, yep, but that's going to be tough to take back. So that's 2021, 24, 25. So at the bare minimum, okay, what the school district did of Wayne's Township, where they spent their $53.5 million of COVID money, they have created an expense of at least $25 million. So if that COVID goes up to September 30th, so when they go for the 25, 26, yeah, their 25-26 school budget, they're going to have to come up with a $25 million plus in additional revenue, or they're going to have to cut a lot of these positions. Do they close down their school and stuff? So here in Keene, the school district and the city didn't do that, and as a result, they reduced the tax rate, and so probably not this year. Well, you'll see some this year, but next year you'll see a big jump going up, because while you may not see between the school district, the county, and the city, you may not see much of a difference in the overall budget, but you will see a difference of where the money comes and what has to be raised locally. And so that's kind of like what Paul Harvey would say. That is the rest of the story. One, they're not being honest on what it means to be a literate person in the United States, and they haven't been honest in a lot of ways of what they were doing and the long-term benefits of $190 million, or between about $430 billion. Free money they got, and now they don't know how to replace it because they didn't do it correctly. So that's it for today's show, and we're here to save you money.